Hello, it's Lexi at Cozy Tea Cafe, and today I'm going to be summarizing A Curse Carved in Bone by Danielle L. Jensen. This is the sequel to A Fate Inked in Blood. It is the second book in a duology, so this is the concluding book. There's going to be lots of spoilers for both the first and the second book. That should go without saying, but if you don't want spoilers, don't continue. Also, side note, if I don't pronounce these correctly, I apologize in advance. I'm doing my best. So we start kind of immediately following how the last book ended off. Freya is on the Drakkar with the rest of, Nordaland's forces, the Unfated, and they finally land in Nordaland, and Harald confronts Bjorn about destroying the plan that he and his mother set in motion. Bjorn says that things have changed and his mother agreed to let Freya live. They talk about Freya's future and both agree that her rage frightens them and she needs to fight her fate. Guthrum, who is a child of Jord, is able to speak mind-to-mind with animals, and he has a familiar bird named Kaya. Guthrum reports that the Skallanders searched for Bjorn and Freya's bodies at the falls, and Snorri believes that they're still alive and in Nordaland. Harald says that they'll head inland to Raffenheim for safety, which is where Bjorn grew up. Harald tells Bjorn that he knows he died to defend Freya, but asks if he'd still do the same for his homeland, and Bjorn tells him that he's forever a Nordalander. Tora, the child of Thor, who killed Bodil, was wounded by Freya and is visibly scarred after Freya rebounded her lightning at the Battle of Grindil, and Freya tells her that she deserved it for killing Bodil. Tora reveals that killing Bodil was an accident and says that she was very fond of her and wanted to be like her when she was younger. Harald overhears and reveals that Tora's uncle was a bad man, so he killed him and took Tora in as his own. Suddenly, they see Islander raiders approach and they prepare for an attack. Harald asks Freya if she wants to fight, but she refuses and stays on the ship. Bjorn realizes that the Islanders have a child of Njord who controls the seas. The warriors send a whale towards the ship and Freya is thrown into the water. She sees Tora unconscious next to her and sees a herd of orcas swimming towards them. She grabs Tora and uses Lean's magic to protect them both. Tora says they have to kill the whale, and at first Freya refuses, but she realizes it's their only chance to survive. Bjorn sees Tora and Freya struggling in the water, so he runs for the child of Njord on the shore and demands that he call off the whales. The warrior is frightful of Bjorn's fire, so he does, but Bjorn kills him anyway. He sees Tora and Freya escape to shore, and he heads into the village to fight. Freya and Tora see that Skada's arm is badly broken and she can't fight. Freya contemplates running away, but she sees a group of Islander warriors escorting kidnapped children to their boat. Freya runs after them to protect the children, but there are too many warriors for her to fight off. The Islanders steal the children onto their boats to flee as Tora, Harald, and Bjorn show up. Tora says that she can't send lightning towards the boat without risking the children, so Freya calls for Hel's power and curses the warriors on the boat to Helheim. Bjorn comforts her after because he knows that cursing souls weighs on her. Harald suspects that the Islander warriors who escaped will tell Snorri that Bjorn is back in Nordaland, so he tells Skada to hunt them down. While Bjorn was gone, Skada replaced him as Harald's right hand, but Harald tells her that the title will go back to Bjorn now. Bjorn senses tension between the once united warriors and wonders what changed while he was gone. On the boat to Raffenheim, Tora thanks Freya for saving her life and says that she owes her a debt. Freya says she only saved her so she could kill her herself, and Tora apologizes for what happened at Grindil and says that she doesn't like hurting people. Guthrum enters onto the boat from the water and tells Freya his story. He came from a small village where no skalds traveled, so their people didn't know many tales about children of the gods. His father left his mother after finding out she preferred women, and when his father came back years later, he demanded that Guthrum fight for the Jarl. Later that day, his father was found mauled by a large animal and the townspeople blamed Guthrum. They killed his familiar dog and his mother in their pursuit for him. Harald was Jarl at the time, and when he came to the village, he told Guthrum that he was an unfated child of a god and executed the people that killed his mother. Harald offered him a home in Raffenheim and asked him to keep an eye out for others like himself who have been mistreated. Harald believes that it's his destiny to bring the unfated up high and bring them together. Bjorn checks in on how Freya's doing after killing all those men, but she brushes him off and insults him. Steinen is sitting around the fire and Freya recognizes her shoes and remembers she was Harald's spy all along. At Fjaltindr, she followed Freya and Bjorn into the caves to spy on them and negotiated her survival with the Draug Jarl in exchange for singing a song about his fame. It was Steinen who was repelled by the wards, not Ylva, and also Steinen who left the message using runic magic on the tree. It was also Steinen who told Skada that Freya was going to see her mother, which ended up getting her killed. Freya sees Bjorn and wonders what really happened the night his mother was attacked, but she doesn't ask because she's afraid that his story will make his lies seem reasonable. Freya follows Steinen into the woods and intends to beat her up, and she sees Steinen kneel before a burned village and weep. Freya feels sympathy for her, so she backs away, but she runs into Bjorn. He pulls her away and tells her that he doesn't trust Harald's intentions because he was set on killing Freya until he found out that she was a child of Hel. He asks her not to serve Harald, and Freya says that she can't because of the blood oath. The next day, Steinen confronts Freya about following her and tells Freya that the burned village she saw used to be her village, and her husband and son were killed by Snorri and his warriors when they came to rescue Bjorn. Steinen says that she was going to kill herself, but Harald found her and told her of his and Bjorn's plan and asked her to become his spy. Harald shows up and reveals that Bjorn never knew that Steinen was a spy or even that she was a Nordalander because he didn't want others to be suspicious if they formed a connection. Freya says that she won't forgive Steinen for her actions because they led to the deaths of people that she loved. They arrive in Rafnheim and Freya learns that Saga is Harald's wife now and she is not queen because she doesn't wish to rule. Harald tells Freya that Bjorn will take her to see Saga in the morning and it's a 2-day ride. Steinen, Skada, and the other warriors express their desire to see Freya dead because they fear more raids and violence from Snorri. Bjorn defends and protects Freya, and Steinen calls him a traitor. Bjorn tells Steinen that she could have killed Snorri in the years she lived with him, but she was too much of a coward. Steinen tries to attack Bjorn, but Harald jumps in before Freya can even see him move. Harald tells Steinen that Saga's prophecy can be interpreted many different ways, and if he can save the Shield Maiden, he will. He'll consult Saga, and if she says Freya's death is the only way, he'll kill her, but if she sees another path forward, he will protect her against anyone who wishes to harm her. Bjorn says that if Harald orders Freya's death, they'll have to kill him first. Bjorn brings Freya to a smith named Gyda, who is a child of Brakr, which makes her the best smith in Nordaland. Gyda gives Freya back her father's broken sword, which has been fixed and reinforced with runes that make it unbreakable. Gyda also gives Freya a new shield and an axe that will never lose its edge. Bjorn and Freya leave on horse and they come across a beautiful young woman who has fallen down their path. They stop to camp for the night and Bjorn goes to wash off in the stream. He's gone for over an hour, so Freya goes searching for him and sees him waist deep in the stream, looking at the woman from earlier who is naked and singing. She says she wants him to take her, and he takes steps towards her, but says, "No, I love her," and it sounds like it's a struggle for him to speak, like he's in some sort of trance. The woman keeps pulling him, but he pulls back and says no. Freya calls out to Bjorn, and he doesn't answer her. Freya sees that the woman has a tail and a hollowed-out back like a tree, and Freya remembers creatures named huldras that seduce men, bed them, and then kill them. Bjorn shakes out of his trance, and the creature grows and transforms into a monster. Bjorn tells her to run, and the creature's tail swipes Bjorn into the water. Freya tells Hel to take the creature's soul, but nothing happens because the creature doesn't have a soul. Freya uses her axe and sword to strike down the huldra and cut off her head, but she keeps regrowing parts. Bjorn uses his fire axe to stab her chest, and the creature explodes. Freya again grapples with her feelings about still caring for Bjorn but not trusting him. They arrive at Saga's house, and Saga tells Freya that her path has been altered, but the destination is the same. Bjorn tells Saga that if she tries to kill Freya, he'll stop her or die trying. Bjorn goes off to hunt for food while Saga and Freya talk. Saga tells Freya that she will not risk losing her son by hurting Freya. Freya confides in Saga and tells her that she is also the daughter of Hel and that she hears Hel's voice in her head. Saga tells Freya that in her second vision, she sees Freya on a battlefield with hundreds dead before her. She tells Freya that she senses she is still somehow under Snorri's control, like he has a leash on her. The blood oath prevents Freya from telling Saga the truth, so she asks her how she can change her future because she doesn't want to die. Saga tells her that the only future she sees for her is the one that she foretold. Freya asks Saga about what happened the night her cabin burned down. Saga says she once loved both Snorri and Harald and was sleeping with both of them, but neither knew. She couldn't see any visions of Harald's future and only brief visions of Snorri's, and he always wanted to know more from her, whereas Harald seemed to just enjoy her company. Snorri found out she was sleeping with Harald and commanded her to break it off, but she thought that was hypocritical because he was handfasted to Ylva. When she became pregnant with Björn, she broke it off with Harald, but he told her that he would always have a place for her in Nordaland. One night while she was with Snorri, she was overcome with a vision of the Shield Maiden, and she blurted out what she saw. Snorri took this as a sign that it would be his victory, even though he was never seen or mentioned in the vision. Snorri came to her cabin one night, demanding more answers, and Saga told Björn to hide. Snorri and her fought, and Björn called Tyr's fire, and that led to the cabin burning down. Saga knocked Snorri out before she fled with Björn to Nordaland. Years later, she had another vision of Freya bringing destruction to Nordaland, so she sent Björn to watch for her and kill her, but he couldn't do it. Saga says he was true with Freya, and they argue this, but Freya slowly realizes that Björn was in an impossible situation with no good choice. Freya and Saga try to find a path forward, and Freya tells Saga that Björn suggested they run and hide Freya away. Saga again suspects that Freya is being controlled by Snorri, but the blood oath prevents Freya from saying anything. Saga realizes this and deduces that Snorri bound her with an oath via Ylva, but since Freya was able to escape with Björn, she suspects that it was an oath to his blood, not just him, which means she'll be bound to life too. Saga says that Björn can command her to head south and to never use Hell's magic again, and thinks that this can be a solution to her fate. Saga senses that Freya is holding back, and she chastises her for her petty grievance against Björn and tells Freya that she can be happily married and never know violence again if she chooses forgiveness. Freya realizes that she's been foolish, and she continues swapping stories with Saga, laughing and drinking until it's late into the night. Freya seeks out Björn and tells him she forgives him and reveals the specifics of the blood oath she swore. She tries to seduce him, but he says no because she's drunk and he knows that she's still angry with him. He tells her he loves her and vows to earn her forgiveness back. The next morning, Björn tells his mother the details of the blood oath. Saga tells Björn to take Freya and lead Snorri away from Nordaland, staying far enough out of reach so Snorri cannot command Freya, then disappear entirely and live out their life in hiding. Freya shows up and agrees with this plan, but Björn is skeptical. Saga suddenly has a vision of Snorri sailing for Nordaland, bringing death and darkness in the name of the Shield Maiden, unless Freya cuts her thread free from him and weaves her own destiny. Freya realizes that she can't lure Snorri away because he's gathered an army and wants revenge against Harald. Snorri doesn't know she has Hell's magic, so she'll try and use the element of surprise. Freya tells Björn to call her to arms and name Snorri as his enemy. With the blood oath, this will allow her to act against Snorri and curse his soul to Helheim, but Björn refuses to use the oath against Freya, even when Saga tries to convince him otherwise. Freya and Björn head out on horse and they argue about the plan. To make a point, Björn commands her to do various things and she has to obey. He says this is why he refuses to control her, but will follow her down the path that she's chosen. They arrive back in Rafnheim and tell Harald about Saga's vision. Harald says that Freya must lead them back because the oath stated that she would follow no man not of this blood, but she is not a man and she can follow herself. Freya says they should wait to hear from Guthrum to see what he discovered about Snorri, then ready their forces without being obvious. Björn chastises her for her plan and says that she just parroted back what Harald wanted. Björn says that she's being used by two men who want to wage war against each other and tells her to run while she still has the chance. Freya says she won't leave people to die in a war that's in her name. Steinen starts to sing a ballad, and Freya realizes that she's omitted parts to make it look like Freya came to Nordaland willingly. While Steinen sings, Björn sees Harald walk off and he follows him. Björn overhears Harald talking to Skada and tells her to protect Freya at all costs and not to let any harm come to her. Arrows start to explode in the sky and they realize that Rafnheim is under attack. Fire arrows breach the wards and buildings start to catch on fire. Björn is looking for Freya but can't find her. Skada shows up with a man who says that his boat is missing and she assumes that Freya took it to flee. Björn says that fleeing is the last thing that she would do after their last conversation, and a young boy approaches and says that he saw who took the boat. It was a stranger carrying his sick wife who said that the smoke was making her sick. Björn then realizes the attack was just a distraction for Snorri to steal Freya back. Björn looks for signs of Freya and sees her sword and sayax discarded by the river, meaning that she was incapacitated. Harald tells him to expect the worst, and Björn sends the wolves out looking for her. Freya wakes up with her captors and sees the specter above her, and it says, "Skaland will be united under the one who controls the Shield Maiden," then disappears. Freya's 4 captors confirm that they were sent by Snorri, and they push her face into the mud and try to pour drugged water into her mouth. She fights the urge to curse them with Hell's magic, just as Bjorn shows up and kills the men with his fire axe. Harald says that Snorri will attack again, but with more force. Freya says that they must attack Skaland, but wants to avoid as many deaths as possible. She chooses to attack by sea, so no innocent lives are lost aside from Skaland's warriors. Bjorn again tells her that he won't command her, and Harald says it may come down to a battle of wills against Snorri and Bjorn. Freya and Steinar apologize to each other and form a tentative alliance. They reach the battle and see all of Skaland's ships and know that they are outnumbered. Above, Kaia the bird spots Snorri, and Freya gets their boats close enough to curse him, but nothing happens. She thinks that something is wrong because none of Skaland's boats are attacking. She hears Snorri's voice approach from her side and realizes the warrior masquerading as Snorri was a diversion. Snorri gives her a command to back down, and she must obey, so her plan falls apart. Things start going south as Snorri commands Freya to kill Tora. Freya is trying to fight the command, but it's not working. Ships all around them are burning, and Guthrum falls overboard, and he's presumed dead. Saga is begging Bjorn to control Freya while Freya is telling him not to. He finally calls on Freya to fight for Nordaland and curse all those who attack to Hel. Freya tries to fight the command, not wanting to use Hel's power to harm her people, but she curses every Skalander warrior to Hel's realm. She protects Snorri using her magic, but when she looks around, she sees empty ships and dead bodies and realizes that the vision has come true. They wash up on a beach, and Bjorn has his foot to Snorri's chest. Snorri asks why he's doing this and says that he loves him and loved his mother. Bjorn tells him to stop lying and says that he knows the truth. Saga emerges, and Snorri seems shocked. Saga says that she and Bjorn saw him with their own eyes, but Snorri is adamant that he came and found the cottage burned. Freya begs Bjorn not to kill Snorri, likely because of the oath, but Bjorn has Tora restrain her. Snorri says that this is not the fate that Saga foresaw for him, and she clarifies that she said the one who controlled the Shield Maiden's fate would unite Skaland, but her words never said for how long he would keep his crown. Bjorn challenges Snorri, but he refuses to fight and says that Bjorn has been deceived. Bjorn hits him in the chest with his fire axe, and Freya tries to shield him with her body. Saga says that he can't survive that wound and starts laughing and skipping around his body. Bjorn and Freya look at her with unease, and her laugh slowly turns into Harald's laugh, and he's revealed to be a shapeshifter and a trickster, a child of Loki. He reveals that Saga died in the cabin and that he's been impersonating her this whole time to manipulate Bjorn. Freya is unable to attack Harald because of the runes that he put in place around them. She and Bjorn walked into the runes, and they are now trapped within them. They ask Tora for help, but she can't because she's forced to obey Harald with some sort of magic. It's clear that she obeys against her will. Freya puts her sword in Snorri's hand as he dies, so we can go to Valhalla. Harald reveals that he went to Saga's cabin masquerading as Snorri to make Saga angry with him because she chose Snorri over him. Bjorn wrecked his plans by accidentally setting fire to the cabin, so he decided to bring Bjorn with him to Nordaland and use him in his game to take Snorri down. Freya asks if it was him who kidnapped her in Rafnheim, and he says yes. Snorri truly believed he was coming to rescue Freya, which is why his warriors didn't attack. Harald says that Freya and Bjorn have served their purpose and commands Tora to kill them. Tora sends lightning towards them, and Freya uses Lene's magic to protect them. The lightning bounces off her shield and nearly strikes Harald. Freya and Tora lock eyes, seemingly plotting to hit Harald with the next strike, but he catches on and commands Tora to stop. Harald tells Tora to grab Snorri's body and says they'll rejoin the fleet to take Skaland, leaving Bjorn and Freya to die within the wards. Bjorn is crushed by the revelations from Harald, and he throws his fire axe through the wards and hits a tree. Seeing that his fire axe can travel through the wards, Freya tells him to hit another tree so it will catch on fire and someone will come to investigate. Freya tells him about the specter she saw and says that she had the same eyes as Bjorn and believes it truly is Saga trying to help them. She tells Bjorn that Saga only had one vision and all of the others were manipulations from Harald trying to make it so Skaland was never united. Bjorn apologizes to Freya for lying and not trusting her and says he was afraid to lose her. She forgives him and they sleep together. Freya starts screaming for help and Ylva shows up looking for Snorri. Ylva calls them traitors and refuses to help them. Freya tells her that Snorri is dead and says that Harald is a child of Loki who has tricked everyone. Bjorn asks about life, and Ylva says that Harald is headed for him. Bjorn tells her to trade him and Freya in exchange for life. Ylva has Freya put her memories into a rune so she can see what happened and decide if she can trust them. She sees Bjorn kill Snorri and she says that she understands it was Harald's trickery that caused him to do it, but says that she can't forgive him. She says since Snorri chose to forgive him, she'll let them free, and she removes the runes but needs to guide them out using her hand because the runic magic was too powerful. She grabs Bjorn first and Ragnar knocks him out with a log. Ylva says that she'll trade Bjorn for life, but she'd be a fool to let Hel's child loose and says that she'll be leaving her there to die. After they leave, Freya sees the specter who says that she can't help, but tells Freya that she's not wholly mortal and her curse can set her free. Freya asks Hel to curse her to walk the path to Helheim. Roots shoot up and grab Freya and she lets them take her down. She sees Saga who tells her that they're between worlds. Saga says her fate is woven with Freya's, and the only vision she sees is of Freya killed and Harald as king of both Skaland and Nordaland. She tells Freya that she needs to cut Harald's thread short. Freya goes into Helheim and asks Hel why she won't take Harald. Hel says that it's more difficult to take the souls of the unfated without risking the wrath of her brothers and sisters. Hel says she's given Freya power over death and tells her to weave her own fate, then disappears. Freya uses Lene's magic to protect her as she walks through the gates of Helheim. Freya sees many of Skaland's warriors and she tries to ask them questions, but they don't seem to hear her. She then sees her brother Geir and she's able to get his attention and tells him that it's her fault that he's here and asks for his help to wake all the others up from their trance so they can fight for another chance at Valhalla. All of the Skaland warriors agree to fight for Freya and they chant her name as they storm the gate of Helheim. The gate doesn't open and Freya can sense Hel's wrath approaching. She calls on Hel's magic and says she's the Lady of Death and those souls are hers to claim, and the gate opens. All of them start to climb up and out of Hel, but Freya gets caught by a serpent who has poison venom. She fights the serpent and escapes with the help of Saga. She arrives back on the beach and sees Drakkar approaching and sees warriors emerge from the water, heading towards her. She realizes that the souls that she's freed are now undead Draug, and she fears for what they'll do to her. Geir leads the undead army and thanks her for giving them another chance to fight for glory, and all of the warriors chant her name. Bjorn tries to convince Ylva to go back for Freya because he believes she's the only one who can truly defeat Harald. Ylva refuses and Bjorn tries to fight his way out, but he's bound and gagged before being handed over to Skada when he reaches Grendel. Bjorn thinks that something is wrong because only 2 of Harald's ships are there and there isn't any sign of a fight in Grendel. Skada escorts him inside and reveals that she knew about Harald all along and says that she's his true heir. Freya and Geir try to figure out a way to reveal Harald's true nature to his warriors, but Freya cannot use runic magic again to capture her memory because she already used it to show Ylva. Freya plans to tell Steinen the truth so she can sing it to the army. Freya sees Guthrum's familiar Kaya fly at her to get her attention and then flies towards a piece of driftwood. Freya changes course and sees that it's Guthrum. She pulls him out of the water and he is in and out of consciousness. She plans to tell Guthrum about Harald to turn against him, but when she turns around, he's gone. Back at Grendel, Leif spots Bjorn and calls him a traitor. Harald, masquerading as Snorri, says that he'll punish Bjorn and dismisses everyone in the room. Ylva calls him a trickster and commands her warriors to kill him, but then he tells Skada to act and she kills the warriors with her bow. Harald commands Tor to dispose of the bodies and he tells Ylva that she'll act as a lady and keep the ruse or he'll kill Leif. Harald will claim that Snorri and him have formed an alliance after killing the Hel child that cursed Skaland's warriors. Harald demands to know where Ylva's warrior Ragnar is, and he suspects that he's gone to free Freya. Bjorn tells him that Ragnar is currently spreading the word of Harald's deception and telling everyone that Snorri is dead and a trickster wears his face. Harald doesn't know what to believe, so he sends Skada to find and kill Ragnar first, then head to where Freya is imprisoned and kill her too. Harald tries to kill Bjorn, but Ylva stops him and convinces him that he'll be useful in trapping Freya if she's escaped already. She recommends scheduling a public execution that will draw Freya in and allow her to be captured. Harald accepts this and Bjorn realizes that Ylva has bought them both time because she understands Freya is the only one who can stop Harald. Skada reaches Freya and her Draug army. Freya sees her shoot towards Ragnar and she runs for him and sees that he's injured but alive. He tells her of Harald's plan to masquerade as Snorri and unite both lands against her. He tells Freya of the planned execution and says that Ylva and Leif both live and tells her to save them as he dies. Freya sees Harald's wolves, Skoll and Hati, and realizes that Harald controlled them using runes on their fur. She cuts away the runes so they can be free. Freya doesn't want to storm Grindel because she doesn't want to harm her own people, so they plan to sneak in through the drains and capture Steinen to tell her to sing about what happened on the beach at the celebration and execution. Bjorn wakes up and Tora is watching over him in the dungeon. He asks how long she's known about Harald, and she says that she went to visit Saga without leave and found the path overgrown and the cabin and stores empty, so she suspected something was wrong. She told Skada her suspicions, who then told Harald. Harald masqueraded as Tora's lover and convinced her to swear an oath to her, but once she did, Harald revealed himself. She says that she can only talk to Bjorn about it now because Harald revealed his true nature to Bjorn himself. Kaia lands near them and they wonder if Guthrum survived the battle. Tora says that if he survived, he didn't make himself known to Harald. Tora hands Kaia to Bjorn, and he tells Kaia his story, hoping Guthrum is alive and seeing through her eyes. Freya and Geir make their way through the drains, and Freya overhears Steinen's voice from above talking to Harald. She's upset that Snorri lives and isn't getting her vengeance, which means that she doesn't know about Harald's ruse, which works in Freya's favor. Steinen also mentions Freya and her army of Draug, which confirms that Skade made it back and reported to Harald. Geir and Freya head up and they encounter Ylva in the hallway and overhear her talking about Bjorn's execution. They sneak into Steinen's room, but it's dark and empty. Steinen then enters the room and Geir grabs her. Freya explains everything to Steinen, but her reaction is not what they expected. She's happy that Snorri received his vengeance and grateful that Harald was the mastermind behind his death. Steinen screams and Freya pleads with her to sing the truth. They escape Steinen's room before anyone comes to investigate the scream, but someone sees Geir and screams that the dead are walking. In the dungeons, Tora tells Bjorn to fight and kill her so he can escape, but Steinen shows up and tells them that Freya came with her Draug army and tried to get her to turn against Harald. Bjorn calls her a coward and Steinen offers to sing her story since no one has ever heard it. As she sings her story, her magic reveals the true villain's face to be Harald's, using trickery to manipulate Steinen into joining his cabal after killing her family while wearing Snorri's face. Steinen has never sung her song before because it was too painful to watch her family die, but now she knows the truth. Steinen tells Bjorn that she knows all the stories of those in Harald's cabal, and she'll compose a song that shows the truth. Freya escapes and sees Guthrum with her Draug army. He explains that when he woke up, he thought he was in a trap and fled. When he learned of Snorri and Harald's alliance, he knew something was wrong, so he sent Kaia to talk to Bjorn. Guthrum says that nothing he's heard has seemed to make sense, so he's inclined to believe Bjorn. Guthrum says that he owes Harald his life, so he won't turn against him, but he won't fight for him in this matter because he's lost his respect. A Skalander at the Grate of Grindel makes an announcement that if Freya turns herself in, they'll give her a swift death and allow Bjorn to go into exile. Freya wants to storm the gate, but the Draug army refuses to fight their own people. Freya is about to turn herself in when the wolves, Skoll and Hati, show up and sniff at her. She asks their permission to draw runes on them so they can understand her, and they seem content to allow this. Once the runes are drawn, Freya asks them if they can smell Harald even when he changes form, and they whine in confirmation. Freya plans to draw everyone out using smoke, then use the wolves to track down Harald so Freya can attack him. Harald visits Bjorn in the dungeons and reveals that he found the real Harald when he was younger and consumed him and took his life. He showed up at the village masquerading as Harald and challenged his father and killed him to take over as Jarl. Steinen is listening in the next cell over, so Bjorn presses Harald for more information. He asks why he has to eat them, and Harald says that Loki's magic allows him to take on the shape of others, but to fully become a person and take on their mannerisms, he needs to take a bit into them into himself, so he chooses to eat them. Freya approaches the gate, and Skade asks if she's there to surrender. Freya says no. Skade shoots an arrow at her, but Freya uses Lean's magic to grab the arrow and prevents Skade from calling it back. She has her Draug army catapult smoking logs over the gate to create a smoke diversion for her plan, but she notices that everyone is facing inside. Skade then turns around and seems to be distracted by something. Guthrum then shows up and tells Freya to stop because Steinen has started singing and has enthralled everyone with her song. Freya sees that the logs have started to catch fire, but no one can notice because they're wrapped up in Steinen's song. Bjorn is brought to the dais to be executed, and Harald as Snorri is up there with Ylva. Ylva says that Steinen has composed a song to start out the festivities. She starts singing and her magic is more powerful than normal, so no one is able to shake themselves out of her visions, including Harald. She tells the story of the child of Loki taking over Harald's body and shows the stories of everyone in Harald's cabal, showing that their tragedies were all manipulations of Harald so he could race in and pretend to be their savior. Harald, as Snorri, is screaming and trying to break free from the trance so he can stop Steinen, but he can't. Steinen's song ends and Freya commands her Draug army to get everyone out before they're burned. She tells the wolves to wait by the gate and smell for Harald while she goes in for Björn. She reaches Björn and gets him out of his shackles and helps him into the Great Hall. They try to escape by river, but Björn is swept away and Freya has to chase after him. They go over the falls, and when they come up for air, Björn says he's cold and snaps at Freya. Freya realizes that this is not Björn because he would never say that he was cold, and he would never act like that towards her, so she tells him to light a fire. He smiles and reveals himself to be Harald. In the aftermath of Steinen's song, Björn, Ylva, and the Unfated tell everyone that Freya and the Draug army won't hurt them and they're there to get them to safety. They say that the real threat is Harald and he'll be close to Tora because she's bound to keep him safe and he's going to want to use that safety. Björn sees Tora hurting a hooded man, so he throws his axe at the man's head, but he's then hit by Skada's arrow because it was a trap. Björn asks Skada why she still follows Harald, and she says that she's his true-born daughter and heir. Gyda arrives and says that the real Harald was her father, but the new Harald killed him and stole his body and tricked her too. Skada denies this, but Gyda says Steinen's magic can only speak truths. Skada tries to kill Gyda, but Geir attacks her first and kills her. Björn tells Guthrum that he needs Kaya's help to find Freya. Harald shapeshifts into a giant wolf and attacks Freya, but fire slams into him and he runs. Björn shows up and they pursue Harald together. They battle Harald and he turns into various creatures and Freya is cut by a poison-tipped tentacle as Björn wounds him. Freya realizes that they won't defeat him by strength because he can just keep shapeshifting, so she jumps on him and curses herself to Helheim and drags him down with her. When they get down to Hel, Harald calls for his half-sister's aid, and Hel appears. Hel is angry at Freya for taking the Skaland warriors back up with her, so she wants Freya's soul for herself, so she heals Harald to challenge her. Freya offers her soul to Hel if she refuses to aid Harald, and Lyn shows up to protect Freya. The other gods show up to witness the battle between Freya and Harald, and Tyr lends Freya his fire axe. She strikes down Harald by throwing the fire axe at his head, just like she did with Ragi in the last book. Harald's soul leaves his body and he doesn't believe that he's been beaten. Saga pulls him down to Helheim and says that she'll keep him in check. Freya still has the poison in her mortal body and she's dying. Odin offers her a place in Valhalla, but Freya says that she's not ready to die yet. Hel says that if she can't have Freya today, she definitely doesn't want Odin to have her, and she reminds Freya that powers are granted even in death. Freya calls on the souls that she sent to Hel and asks them to find Liv for her. Liv arrives and heals Freya and says that if she can climb her way out, the poison will be left behind in Hel. She hears Björn calling for her and she fights to break the surface of the ground as Tora, Geir, and Björn all try to dig from the surface. They grab her and pull her out. They tell Freya that she's succeeded in uniting both Skaland and Nordaland and defeating the trickster. Freya releases Geir and the Draug army and they're able to enter Valhalla. The warriors ask Freya if she will be queen of Skaland and Nordaland, and she says no. They will go back to the way that they used to do things, they'll go back to their clans and allow their jarls to lead them as it's supposed to be. Ylva tells her that she was destined to unite Skaland, but Freya says that the vision never said for how long. Grindel has burned down, so their people will have to rebuild. Leif is now jarl and he asks Björn and Freya to join his warband, but they decline. Leif says that they have to join, and Freya panics that she'll be bound by his commands, but feels no pull. Ylva says that entering Helheim must have forfeited the oath because, in a sense, she died. Björn takes her to Saga's old cabin and says that they'll rebuild there and have a peaceful life, and he asks her to marry him. A year later, they are happily married and living in a crumbling old cabin while tending a farm. Ingrid and her son come to visit, and she has remarried. Ingrid asks Freya if she's content, and she says yes, but then a messenger arrives and says that Leif desperately needs help after a raid. Björn says that they no longer fight, they're living a peaceful life, but Freya agrees to go only to see what's happened. They gather their weapons and their gear, and on their way there, they both feel the thrill of a battle again, and they realize that it's who they are and they don't want to give up. So that's where the story concludes. As always, if you have recommendations for books that you'd like to summarize next, just leave me a comment below, and thanks for following along.